Hi, you're up front with Richard Niles, and tonight the lovely blonde wearing the long embroidered gloves going up to her shoulders, standing up front with Les Brown and his band of renown, is Miss Doris Day.
Well, when people look back at Doris Day, they don't think of her as the great singer she was. They think of her as a movie star from all those wonderful Glass Bottom Boat and Pillow Talk and all those great films, all right? But if you look at her body of work as a recording artist, it's awesome. It's just incredible, you know, and people tend to forget that.
A chance to romance when the dancing is little light.
Doris had an innate way of singing. It was natural.
I always admired her films, but I had no idea what a complex singer she was until a friend played some of her jazz big band music for me from when she was just starting out, and I was blown away. And I think most people don't see her in that way. They see her as Calamity Jane, which is wonderful, but she's much more of a complex artist than that.
I'm telling you, Jack, great days are back. Take the word of a bird with an ear.
A good band leader knows when he has a great vocalist, and Doris Day was one of the best singers who ever lived. The only unfortunate thing is she never realized how good she really was.
Dad had a couple of minor hit records. As soon as Doris came on board, things changed drastically. It was such a great combination. You know, I think so much of it people feel coming off of people on a stage, too, and off records. You know, they feel the compatibility and their ability to work together, and the two of them really liked each other. You know, it was never a romantic involvement at all, but they genuinely really liked each other until the day my dad died.
Les Brown Jr. continues to keep the legend alive with the band of renown. It's hard not to think of Doris Day as the iconic, soothing, honey-haired songstress. But before she found fame as Doris Day, she was Doris Mary Ann von Kappelhoff, and in those days, she had other more energetic intentions.
I loved ballet more than anything, and I kind of thought about maybe I'd like to be a ballerina. And as I loved singing too, but I didn't think of myself as ever being a singer, which is strange. Anyway, my dancing career ended abruptly. A train hit the car, and I'm here to tell you about it, which is rare. But anyway, my right leg was severely injured, and I was laid up for years, it seemed, 2 or 3 maybe, before I was able to really get around, you know, without crutches. And I used to fall down and slip and slide on the crutches, you know.
Which led her to convalesce on her bed next to her radio.
Award-winning New York singer Karen Oberlin created the off-Broadway show and subsequent CD, Secret Love, a tribute to the true Doris Day.
She developed a passion for the big bands, and she just sat there and listened and copied and sang along with Ella Fitzgerald. Most notably, if you listen to a lot of that early Les Brown music, you can hear a lot of Ella in there.
Day by day, I'm falling more in love with you.
She would just sing along and get to know all the band members and the bands and who they were and what they did and the difference between the big bands. So she learned a lot there. And then her mother, worrying about her depression while she convalesced, she had to drop out of high school. She wanted to give her an activity, and she seemed to like the radio and like singing along with it, so she got her some singing lessons in Cincinnati, where she's from, with somebody named Grace Rain, who had a connection to the local radio station. So Doris credits Grace with a lot of lessons on how to sing and how to deliver a lyric.
You're making all my dreams come true, so come what may, I want you to know.
my vocal coach in Cincinnati, a wonderful lady named Grace Rain, who couldn't sing a note, by the way. She used to say to me, now remember, the most important thing about this song is the lyric. It's what you're singing to people. And you must sing to one person. Sing like you're singing to one person. But that one, everyone out there will think he or she is the one.
Hide your heart from sight. Plug your dreams at night. It could happen to you.
And so a singing star was born. Of course, you need some experience to become a star, and just having a music teacher for a father and an uncle with a jukebox isn't enough. Her vocal coach, Grace Rain, arranged for Doris to audition for Cincinnati radio station WLW's Amateur Showcase, which she won singing a song called Day by Day. And since the song had been lucky for her, she changed her name to Doris Day. Soon after, at the tender age of 17, she was first approached by Les Brown. Here's music writer Will Friedwald.
Doris Day had been a young girl singer around the Midwest. She worked with Barney Rapp's band in Cincinnati, and then she worked very briefly with Bob Crosby before she got in touch with Les Brown. And this was a very young band. She was a very young singer, and this was a very young band that was practically just out of college. Actually, they'd started recording while he was still at Duke University in North Carolina, and they were originally known as Les Brown and his Duke University Blue Devils. And just a few years later, they were a professional band, or he was leading a professional band, and she was the first girl singer of note that he hired.
My dad was looking for a vocalist, and I think this was 1942, and he had heard about this girl who was singing with Bob Crosby's band. So he went down to one of the theaters, I don't know, the Paramount or something, where the Crosby band was working, and Doris was the singer. And I mean, she was just a baby. She was maybe 16, 17 years old. He said, man, this is the girl. You know, I mean, she's got the look. She's the girl next door, and she sings great. So he went backstage afterwards, and he said, are you happy with the Crosby band? She says, no, there's one of these guys who won't leave me alone, and they won't do anything, and it's driving me crazy. He said, would you like to join my band? She said, sure. He says, that'll never happen in my band. I choose my guys for a lot of reasons, and one of them is that they're all gentlemen and they're all compatible. And that was it. And a lifelong association was born.
And it happened to me.
Well, we were very lucky. She was with Bob Crosby in 1939. He picked her up in Cincinnati, and something happened between Cincinnati and the Strand Theater in New York, and she had put in her notice, and they said, you better go hear this girl. I went and heard her, went backstage, and we talked, and got on right away, got on well together, and she came with the band.
She was 16 still when she joined the band, and she was passionately in love with Al Jordan, trombonist from the Barney Rapp Band. They hadn't been together much since she had left the band, so she left Les Brown at 17 and married Al Jordan, and starting the second day of their union, he abused her and beat her, but she was pregnant right away, so she had to stay with him, and she left the day after the birth of Terry, her son.
Musician, arranger, and close friend of Doris Day, here's Frank Comstock.
She left because she was pregnant. I guess she was going to go home, have kids, and be another German housewife in Cincinnati. She was starting to work at the local stations and singing with a local band in Cincinnati just to be doing something. Les heard she was trying to get back into work, and so he called her, and I guess that's where it ended.
When all is said and done.
Les Brown, he heard that I was singing again, and he called my mother, and he said, "Oh, she has to come back with the band," And I did. So everything was really good. It was just sort of it was all like a jigsaw puzzle coming into place.
At that point, that is sort of the classic era of Doris Day and Les Brown, where they had a whole bunch of hits together and became one of the really great singer-band leader relationships.
Stop me from guessing. Take no time to tease. Stop all this messing and put your begging baby at ease. I wanna love, love, love you just the way I wanna love you. I'm gonna try to make you try to understand. When all is said and done, the one for me is you. So come to baby, do. You come to baby, do.
Despite her rocky start, Les Brown really believed in Doris Day. What was it he saw in the mellifluous young singer? Jazz pianist and broadcaster Marion McPartland.
I would think a combination of her looks and her personality and that very youthful voice. I mean, she had a wonderful voice. She had everything that a guy would want. She had looks. She had great personality, and she put that into all the songs that she sang, and she made many a hit for him.
I try to explain this to young singers. The ability on record, even though she was singing live, the same thing holds true in the venues that they performed in, which were basically ballrooms in those days. This was not the experience we have today, where you go to a concert and you must sit there and pay homage to your artist up there, right? This was an interactive experience. So the band wasn't happy unless people were out there dancing. And they'd see that, and that had pumped the band up. Now, Doris had the ability with her voice to bring the whole audience right into what the band was doing. And that's what translated later to her records. When you hear a Doris Day record, you could be in a room full of people talking, and the minute she'd start to come on and sing, your attention would go to that record. And that's an innate ability.
Sooner or later you're gonna be coming around, I'll bet ya.
She can deliver a lyric. Les Brown always said that about her, that she, above all other singers other than Frank Sinatra, could deliver a lyric. He really believed what she said.
When you go out to perform that way, you can't perform to 4,000 people or 2,000 people or 17. Right? You can only perform for one person, especially when you're doing the kind of material that she did. And that's what she understood. She had this effervescence about her that just came right off the stage. I mean, you could not watch her. She was that compelling.
You're gonna knock on my door. You did it before. Matter of factly, I don't know exactly when, but sooner or later you wanna be coming around and want my loving again.
Dad was a great musician. He was a great trainer of musicians. Probably his strongest ability was to keep the integrity of the music at a peak level, always. It was very well-rounded, the band. His focus was always the band. It was never Les Brown. It was always the band of renown.
They didn't call it a band of renown for nothing. Les Brown had been a successful arranger since he broke up his first college band in 1936. When a radio announcer ad-libbed an introduction calling him Les Brown and his Band of Renown, the name stuck.
Les Brown was a wonderful person. He was wonderful to work with, had a great band. I would say, from what they did together, I would say they had a very felicitous relationship because of their personalities, or because strictly probably of Les's personality. He was just a terrific guy and everybody knew it.
Musician Stumpy Brown is the brother of the late band leader.
He was so easy to work with. Well, I shouldn't say this, being my brother, you know. Musicians just love working for him. And Les was a great musician, but he knew what he wanted out of a band, and he knew what he wanted out of soloists. And if a solo did too much, he told the soloists, no, that's not what I want. And they all listened to him. He was a great teacher.
Dig it, Doris, on the vocal chorus.
When he was a Duke, he copied everything after Benny Goodman. Then later on, he went into Jimmy Lunsford, and the style was basically his own ideas of things with the arrangers. And most bands, the arranger would bring in an arrangement, and you have the score. The leader would say, okay, take it, not less. He loved to conduct a score for the first time, and he used to rehearse the arrangement and everything.
Musician, arranger, and close friend of Doris Day, here's Frank Comstock.
We had a regular band. I just kept writing stuff, turning it out, and Les came to me one day and says, you know, we're the only band that doesn't have a real style, sound like. He says, why don't you write something that would, so anytime we play, people know it's my band, not Glenn Miller and his clarinet lead or somebody else. So I sat down. It was very simple what I did. I took the trumpets and put them 4-part harmony. The trombones played the exact same notes an octave lower, and it was a beautiful, nice, fat sound.
I don't know if people know just how important the arrangers were to the style of a band, but they created the sound that made it that you knew who that band was the instant you heard it, all right? Frank, of course, did a lot of Doris's arrangement. They were very close friends.
When I did something for her, I'd ask her if she had anything special. Sometimes she'd have a turnaround phrase, let's call it that, at the end of a song. I'd have to check the key, naturally. And sometimes she'd just say, whatever you write's okay, so we'll do it. You know.
I ain't hip, but I dig
It's always a good thing for a singer to have a solid relationship with their arranger, as Doris had with Frank Comstock. And how about her relationship with Les? As a young woman entering a man's world, and worse than that, a jazz musician's world, he became something of a father figure. New York singer Karen Oberlin.
He enjoyed that role, I think, with her. And from a businessman's perspective, he ran a very tight ship. No drugs, no booze, no dope, no hard language, even. Somebody writing about the band said something to the effect of, X band played on booze, Y band played on dope, but Les Brown and his Band of Renown played on milkshakes. Everyone started calling them the Milkshake Band, and Les Brown is quoted as saying, well, nobody was more of a milkshake girl than Doris Day.
Well, what do you know? He smiled at me in my dreams last night. My dreams are getting better all the time. And
there were more malted milks than booze from those kind of things in those days. I'd say maybe half of that band never had a drink in their life. We got along pretty good. I guess Les was just loose enough that he didn't push on too many things. And I think we all understood that, we got a good band here. Let's keep it that way. You know, the bottom line for me, and I don't know whether everybody felt the same way, but I just had to have fun. So we laughed a lot. A lot of times she'd be sitting maybe a couple feet in front of me, and I'd be playing my horn, and somebody would come up and ask her something. She'd turn around, kind of a code message, she'd turn around, no, I have to go with Frank, we're going to do a new tune tonight. Or, you know, so I want to say that every time I talk to Doris now, which is maybe once every week, she says, Jesus, Frank, I wish we were back on the road. We had so much fun. I said, Doris, we're both 19 years old, too. It's a little different, you know.
My dreams are getting better all the time.
Then came Sentimental Journey, and that just broke it wide open.
The Sentimental Journey, I was part writer on. My arranger and I wrote the tune, and I refused the first arrangement, and I talked it over with him, and the second arrangement was the one that we finally recorded.
Ben Homer, who was Les Brown's arranger way back in the early 30s, or mid-30s, I should say, wrote this song. He brought the arrangement in about 18 weeks in a row, and he'd always say, oh, I left the trombone parts at home, or something like it. So I don't know what he was doing. I guess he never had it finished or whatever. Finally, we got the whole arrangement there, and obviously it was a big hit.
Like so many things, that comes from another source.
Gonna take a sentimental journey. Gonna set my heart at ease. Gonna make a sentimental journey to renew old memories.
It doesn't come from our great minds or our great spirits or anything. It's just his chief arranger was a man named Ben Homer. And Ben was a great musician and a wonderful guy, and had one bad habit. He loved to bet on horses and forever was in debt. So in those days, you used to be able to go to a music publisher and say, I need, you know, an advance, $50 or something, and I'll bring a song in on Monday morning and have it on your desk. So that's exactly what happened. Well, he had taken the $50. Instead of taking it home to the wife and family, he went to the track and he lost that. But he still had to have that song on the publisher's desk on Monday morning. And Sunday evening, and he's sitting at the Brill Building, and he's trying to write a song, and he can't write anything. And he called my dad, and he said, Les, I'm stuck. I gotta have a song on Buddy's desk tomorrow morning, and I can't write. I'm just so torn up. My wife's gonna go. Dad said, don't worry. I'm not doing anything. I'll come down. So he walks down to the Brill Building, goes up, and said, let me see what you have. And Ben played dee-da-dee, da-dee, da-dee. And Dad said, what are you doing with that interval? How is a singer going to sing that? That's a little. Why don't we make it simple? And we'll go dee da dee da dee da. He says, yeah, that works. 15 minutes later, they had the song. Buddy Morris was the publisher, and Buddy had just read a book that was a 19th century travelogue by the name of Sentimental Journey. So he gave it to a lyricist, Bud Green was his name, and he said, Bud, I want you to write a lyric for this song, and I want the title to be Sentimental Journey. It was released in February of 1945, and of course, a few months after that, the war ended. And Sentimental Journey with Doris's, girl next door voice and all that became the theme song for all those kids coming home from World War II. That had tremendous impact on their lives. Not only the troops coming home in that generation, but the prior generation, the mothers and fathers, the grandparents of those kids. And that song just did it. Bang, it locked it all in. The war is over, and here come our sons home from the war.
Never Never thought my heart could be so yearning.
For many of those boys, this was the only time that they ever cried, was hearing this song. Doris knew immediately that it was going to be a hit, but I don't think anybody knew how big a hit it would be. It put her on the map.
Sentimental journey.
And what a big map that turned out to be. Doris got on her Deadwood stage, cracked her whip, and rode all the way to Hollywood.
Oh, the Deadwood stages are rolling on over the plains, with the curtains flapping and the driver a slapping the reins.
After singing with Frank Sinatra on the Saturday Night Hit Parade, she was encouraged to get into the movies, and the blonde bombshell exploded with a long series of hit films, such as Love Me or Leave Me with James Cagney, The Man Who Knew Too Much with James Stewart, and many romantic comedies such as Lover Come Back and Pillow Talk with Rock Hudson. That's it for tonight's show. Sentimental thanks to Les Brown Jr., Stumpy Brown, Frank Comstock, Karen Oberlin, Will Friedwald, and Marion McPartland. And more Pillow Talk to my producer, Elizabeth Clark. Next week, we're swinging with Artie Shaw, and the man up front is the mellifluous Mel Torme and his Meltones. So if you want to see through the velvet fog, come join me next time here on Radio 2 for Up Front with Richard Niles.
So whip crack away, whip crack away, whip crack away. The wheels go turning round, homeward bound. Can't you hear 'em humming? Happy times are coming for to stay. Hey, set 'em up, Joe, set 'em up, Joe, set 'em up, Joe. Set 'em up, Joe.